Welcome friends once again to my YouTube channel. I am Bhavani Singh, PGT English, JNV Sirohi. Let us read today a very interesting poem with the name My Mother at 66, written by Kamla Das. Let us talk about what would be the learning outcome of the poem. The poem My Mother at 66 is a fine example of complex subtleties of human relationship. Student will be able to understand and recognize the significance of various literary devices including simile, repetition, symbols and images, and he would be able to explain the meaning and the appeal of the poem. Before starting the poem, it is very important for you to understand the academic vocabulary. These are the terms you should know as you read and analyze the poem. So, the first thing important for you is to understand what is rhyme. Rhyme is the repetition of stressed vowel sound and all remaining sounds in a word. In general, there are three types of rhyme. Number one is end rhyme, second one is internal rhyme, and the third one is approximate rhyme. Most rhymes are at the end of the lines and are called end rhymes. Rhymes within a line are called internal rhymes. For example, in this sentence, light shakes across the lakes. Here, shakes rhymes with lakes. Similarly, the last rhyme is approximate rhyme. In approximate rhyme, the repetition of sound is not exact, but it seems as if it is exact. For example, now, no. So, we will discuss that what type of rhyme we will have in this poem. So far as this poem is considered, this poem is a free verse. Poetry that does not follow a regular or steady pattern of rhyme and meter is called free verse. So it is important that there is no rhyme in the poem and it is best example of free verse. Now let us talk about figurative language used in the poem. We generally use poetic devices in order to extend the real meaning of the poem with the help of certain figure of speeches. Figurative language is a language that is based on a comparison that is not literally true. So, you will find in this poem simile, personification, repetition, metaphor, images, and many other literary devices like alliteration. So far as simile is considered, it is a comparison containing the words like or as. Personification is referencing inanimate objects with human like qualities or abilities. When we talk about repetition, it is the use of repeated word parts, words, or phrases. Metaphor, reference of one thing to imply another. It is comparison without the use of like or as. And so far as images is considered, description of anything that we see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is images. So you will find these 4 or 5 poetic devices used in this poem. Now let us see the poetic device used in the poem with particular line or the phrase from the poem. Simile. Here in this poem you will find the line, her face ashen like that of a corpse. Or another example, wan, pale as a late winter's moon. Personification, you will find 2 words, trees sprinting. Repetition, thought away, thought away. Metaphor, in the line, marry children spilling out of their homes. And imagery, marry children, trees sprinting, winter's moon. Now let us talk about the theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is fear of loss, anguish of a daughter over her mother's advancing age. It is also the fear of permanent separation and fast paced life. The theme is also related to inevitable death of our childhood, youth, and loved ones. The theme of nostalgia is also there. The poet is carried away by her childhood premonition of losing her mother. So far as the message of the poem is considered, it is about aging as a natural process. Yet, the fear of separation from your loved ones is very painful. And in this poem, it has been depicted through the intricate relationship between mother and daughter. It also conveys the message that do not be so busy in your desires that you forget to take care of your elderly parents when they need you most. Now, let us discuss the development of the poem or the main points. Kamla Das traveling to Cochin airport with her mother in a car looks at sick pale face of her dozing mother. Old fear of losing her mother returns. Sprinting trees and merry children provide the contrast and relief. After the security check, the old familiar pain of losing mother returns. Tries to hide her emotions by smiling, bids goodbye to her mother with a hope to see her again. Now it's time for the vocabulary or the hard words used in the poem. First one is doze. It means a short, light sleep. Ashen, very pale like ash. Corpse, a dead body. Sprinting, here it means shooting out of the ground, but in general it means fast racing. Spilling, it means full of, that is to say, here it means to move out in great numbers. Wane, unnaturally pale, and ache, pain. Now let us see the exact paraphrasing of the poem line by line. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me. In these lines, the poet recalls a trip back to Cochin from her holiday in her parents' house the previous week. It was a Friday, and that morning she was driving with her mother next to her on the front seat. Next stanza, doze open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away and. In these lines, the poet says that she was observing her mother, who had fallen asleep on the front seat with her mouth slightly open. Her mother's face was pale, and it reminded her of the nearly white faces of dead bodies. It is then that she comes to realize that her mother was not young any longer, and that her appearance had caught up with her age. This was very hard for the poet to accept, and so she was determined to focus her attention on something else. Third stanza, looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes, but after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her, wan, pale. In these lines, the poet says that she turned away from her aging mother and decided to look outside the windows of the car in which she was driving. Outside, her eyes fell on the trees that the vehicle was passing by. The car was moving so fast that by way of relative motion, it seemed to the poet that all the trees she could see were all running at full speed past her. It seemed that those trees must have been quite youthful if they had the energy to move at such a fast pace. The poet's eyes also fell on the children who were coming out of their houses, brimming over with their excitement to get outside. The poet passed all these sights and reached the airport. Till then, her mind was distracted by the sights. However, after the security check, she was standing a short distance away from her mother, and again she chanced to notice the old woman. Just as before, her mother appeared very pale and insipid. Now, the last stanza, as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, see you soon, Amma. All I did was smile and smile and smile. In these lines, the poet compares her mother's face with the sight of the moon of a night towards the end of winter. This made her recall the thing she had been most afraid of during her childhood, the fear that her mother would die one day. This was a fear that had plagued her many times before, and it was plaguing her again now. However, she did not let that fear show itself on her face. Instead, she put up a brave face and waved goodbye to her mother. She assured her mother that they would be seeing each other again soon, and all the while, even though she was in great agony, the smile never left her face. So the poem ends with hope and optimism. Now, this is a small activity for you to infer, clarify, interpret, and identify the main theme behind these phrases or sentences used in the poem. The first has been done for you. The line is, daughter noticed inside the car. She noticed her mother, pale and dull, lifeless. Kamladas noticed in the world outside. So, what did she notice? Sprinting trees signify, you will have to explain and tell the figure of speech used here. Marry children spilling out are symbols of, you will have to complete the sentence. The trees are young because, you will have to bring out the contrast and explain. The pain poet experiences is, so what is the pain poet is experiencing? Please explain, pale as a winter's moon. And last, reason for the poet's smile is completed. What is the reason behind poet's smile? Now it is time to sum up the poem. This is the gist of the poem. The poem My Mother at 66 is one of the finest examples of human bonding, that of a mother and daughter. It describes the pain and fear of the poet of losing her mother due to harsh reality of life, which is death. Death is inevitable, but the poet ends the poem with hope. The smile of the poet signifies that she is hopeful that she will meet with her mother very soon. So, thank you, friends. In just 18 slides, we have tried to cover each and every aspect of this poem, My Mother at 66. Stay tuned for more updates about the channel with interesting teaching of the textbook Flamingo and some other interesting things related to language learning. Thank you, and please share, like and subscribe this channel.